Greetings, brothers and sisters. I forgot to say this. I was going to say this at the beginning of this video. And then there'll be a second introduction because I forgot to include this. So, my apocalaughsnow channel, I don't want to call it my backup channel because I post things regularly there, got a second community guideline strike, which was then overturned. And so I had to take some action to save the channel, and so there was no content on it for a day. People were asking me about it, but now I haven't answered questions over there, so I don't know if people have figured that out. But my Apocalypse channel is back. Again, there was a bogus community guideline strike that was overturned, and I'll talk about that more. I covered that in a video yesterday on the channel, if you haven't seen it yet. So for those of you who don't know about my other channel, there's a link in the description box in any of my videos to go over to that channel. And if there's any issue with this channel, I post things there. But I also post about 4 or 5 videos a week there as well. For other reasons, right? Algorithms. And when I have other content, right, that is, it's just a little bit of a different channel over there. It's got a different vibe, right? But anyways, let's get into this video today. Greetings, brothers and sisters. Well, here we go again. I got something to say about, repeating patterns and things. But let's start off here with I got a bunch of stuff to get to because I had all these things that were up on my one of my browsers. I had all these, open stories I didn't get to cover yesterday and the day before. And so my wife sent me this with in an email that said skulls, and I didn't see it at first, right? This is from the Economist magazine, and it says the coming food catastrophe. And you can see here, this is from May of 2022, the coming food catastrophe. And they have these skulls, right? These, skulls in wheat in the form of what they harvest from the head of the wheat plant, right? Or some sort of grain. And they do a lot of creepy covers and prophetic covers. And, this is, just one of many. This is from 2021, and they're playing pulling the slot machines here. And then you have forest fires and, the dollar, which is crashing. Jojo Magoo, masks here, nuclear war, right? All this stuff here, this one there, right? This stuff, all these things that they're putting in 2021. This is in 2020, Trump and Brexit, and they have all these various, words of things that are upcoming crises and what to do about them. This was in 2017, the world in 2017, Planet Trump, and they've done the tarot cards here. And they have the tower and the world and just all these Illuminati signs. I've actually covered these in past videos, right? Here's the apocalypse and the death thing. There's got nuclear war and like a death figure sitting on the horse with a scythe. There's another thing here, the magician. All these various, I went through the symbolism before. I was going to go through these quickly here. This was from 2014. I just found this. New World Order, and they have Putin with his shirt off, right? And this was the big one, 2019. This was loaded with stuff right before the big year in 2020. And one of the symbols here, I want to see where it is in the picture, is right here. You can see it's the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, right? Which, again, they have a lot of apocalyptic stuff that they put out there. It's, one of their telltale sort of themes in all of their, the covers of their magazines. Doom and gloom and apocalypse. And so, they're really getting into this food crisis, this, this mass starvation on the planet, which they predicted 2 years ago, right? Like they predicted this in 2019 before everything started to happen in 2020. The World Economic Forum, the things to do with the UN. They had all these studies done, various organizations all predicting food shortages and worldwide famine. So I want to talk about storytelling and the creative process, right? Um, when you are a writer or a storyteller or somebody who makes up jokes or whatever, things that I've done, personally, I do storytelling and, I've written books and I understand how the creative process works, right? And there's a lot of templates out there. Like, let's say, the Romeo and Juliet theme. Like, think about how many different movies have some element of the Romeo and Juliet forbidden love. Two young people find love. Doesn't have to be young people, but their families and society are against it for some reason, right? The West Side Story is just copying that theme, that narrative, right? Things like that. So you see this over and over again. You'll be like, oh, this is going to be a Romeo and Juliet story, right? You can see this with people who write jokes. There's some people who, their jokes always have a sort of a formula, like they have a template. And you can see it's very formulaic. There's not anything new and creative in what they do. Jokes will follow a certain pattern. You'll see that. And then certainly TV shows and movies and things, they have these various patterns. And when you recognize the pattern, you know what's going to come next, right? I have pattern recognition from being dyslexic. And doing this work has just honed all those natural abilities and things that I had. And then doing my own creative, work or whatever, storytelling and things like this. So, I'll watch a TV show or movie with my wife and I'll say, all right, well, this is going to happen, right? And it happens, most of the time. Once in a while they try to throw you a curveball. Like, for example, they'll introduce a character or an item or something, right, into the storyline. And so it's going to come up later, right? It's like a character will be practicing, like, holding their breath, right? And they're like, I can hold my breath for 2 minutes. And you're like, okay, well, there's going to be some underwater scene with it, right? Like, you know that this is going to come, right? They're going to have to, that reason they introduced that, information was that later on in the movie, that person holding their breath is going to be crucial to some, plot line sort of development, right? A woman will be talking about her crazy ex-boyfriend, or a guy will be talking about his crazy ex-girlfriend, and then all of a sudden they'll make an appearance at, some part of the crucial part of the movie, right? There'll be some, introducing of knowledge that has to. You'll be like, well, why are they introducing this? Why are they talking about this? Because it's going to come back later. So if you look at the movie Signs, M. Night Shyamalan movie, and there's a character, a girl who leaves glasses of water all over the house, right? So she fills up big glasses of water and leaves them all over the house, like just everywhere you find a glass of water, right? And, Mel Gibson, who's the father, never bothers to, take those glasses. Like if you had a kid who leaves, you have kids all the time that'll leave, dishes or things, around the house, and either you get them to pick them up or you pick them up yourself. But he just left all these glasses of water. There's like 50 of them in the living room, right? And so they introduce this, this element, this character does this. This little girl fills a glass of water, takes a sip, and then just leaves it there. And then they introduce that the aliens are, they're water, they don't go near the water. So he himself, as a character in the movie, M. Night Shyamalan tells Mel Gibson, they stay away from water, right? So they came to invade a planet that's, 70% water, but like, I digress here. And so they also introduce a scene in which Mel Gibson's wife has been pinned against a car, she's been hit by a car. Who by M. Night Shyamalan himself, he was driving the car. That's he's the character that that was involved in the accident, right? And Mel Gibson goes to seek him out, and he says they don't like water, so he's giving you, as the director and writer of the movie, a clue. And then Mel Gibson's wife, they show the scene where she tells the Mel Gibson that his brother, Joaquin Phoenix, should swing away, right? So again, she's, stream of conscious, and they say it's just stream of consciousness. It didn't make any sense because he's a guy who led the league in strikeouts because he always swung for the home run, right? Some guy's mocking him earlier in the film. So all these things, all this information is given to you as little clues. And so at the end of the movie, spoiler alert, Joaquin Phoenix is there. He's got a baseball bat in his hand because, he's told to swing away. And they have an alien holding a kid who has asthma, and there's all these things to do with that because the asthma prevents the alien from giving him the poison that puts him into a coma because he can't breathe because he's got asthma. So that was another thing, right? And so the guy swings away at all the glasses of water that's been conveniently left around for an alien that's allergic to water. Right? So you see something's introduced because it's going to be a key factor in the story later on. They don't introduce something unless like they want to confuse you or some kind of they're messing with you if they're not going to give it to you later on. And so in like real life narratives, when you see the news and they're rolling out some sort of, narrative, like you see with the intelligence community, they create profiles of individuals, that they're individuals who behave in a certain way, people who are, sociopathic and do things that are horrific. And they all follow a certain pattern, right? So the intelligence community, and I don't know which one, maybe the CIA or maybe some other, more nefarious subgroup or whatever it is, all of them create these basically news media packages where there's an event, whether it's controlled or not, usually it is. And, once the event happened, they talk about this in JFK, right? The movie JFK, to do with the assassination of Kennedy, that they already have the information rolling out right after the event happened, right? So then they start giving you an explanation of what happened in a psychological operation. It's like a package, right? And they create these profiles of people that you've, learned about in earlier events that follow a certain, personality configuration. Like they might be, loners, for example, right? People who are like socially, some kind of social issues, right? They can't relate to other people. They're loners, and like that's one thing about their personalities. The kind of person that might write a manifesto, for example, right? And then all these other, various talking points emerge over a period of a couple days, and you'll see the pattern. Like the talking points are the same, and there'll be past situations where you're like, oh, okay, I've seen this before. And then you kind of start guessing the plot lines, and you think it's, organic, and you think you're so smart, because they're leading you down a path, right? Jojo Magoo did this when Afghanistan narrative was going against him. He introduced a new subset of a villainous group. Remember this? This is just a little while ago. He introduced this new subset of a villainous group. And then an event happened like the next day. And people are like, I bet it's that group he was telling us about, right? They're leading the viewer along a set of, where you'll have your own, you come up with what you think are your own, oh, wow, I have insight to it. And then you tell all your friends, I told you, I told you this was coming, like something you just heard about yesterday. And you're like, hey, I know what's going on, right? And so they lead the human mind to make its own conclusions based in little hints and information about it leading up to like a climax in the plot line, and then they tell you what happened and why. They tell you why it happened and what you need to do about it. Right? Problem, reaction, solution. They create a problem. There's a reaction where you freak out or get upset, and then they give you the solution, and the solution is already something they're moving you towards. Right? And a part of that is always fake outrage from people that don't have feelings for other people, right? Selfish politicians, news media people, they're all I showed you all the crying at CNN they did when they introduced all of a sudden, all right, let's make it so our reporters cry. I have that somewhere. I'm not going to put that in here, but I made a whole video about this. And so they all start crying, and, all these various CNN people start crying about people who die in a certain situation, but they cover death every day on CNN, right? This is the apocalyptic stuff with the Economist magazine and all this stuff, right? There's death and destruction all the time, and people are dying all the time, right? It's just something that happens in horrific, often unfair circumstances. But CNN reporters cried for specific issues, right? And so, or even it went into MSNBC and other. It's like journalists are crying now. It's a new behavior we've introduced into the show, what I call the show, right? And so, the one thing to always remember is governments are responsible for more death and suffering than any other individual or group. Now, I talked about this. I have a master's degree in counseling, and I used to do assessment measures and use the DSM-4. Now it's called the DSM-5. And it's filled with individual diagnoses. And pretty much everybody can be diagnosed with at least one or two things in the book, and most people with multiple things, because people are psychologically not functioning very well. And so you have a whole society with psychological dysfunction, right? Human beings, are we born psychologically messed up? Are we all insane? Is there some sort of genetic component to our insanity, right? Right? Some component to our psychological makeup, or is it a system? But they never blame the system. It's always the individual, even if it's a whole other country. Once in a while, they're saying, all right, this country's evil. Like right now, it's Russia and Putin. But it's always somebody, some group, some demographic, right? But it's usually one person that's leading them. There's a villain, and that person's messed up. The rest of the world is fine, but it's not fine according to the DSM-5. But it's always an individual. You're blaming the individual. And the individual can never say, the system's screwed up, that's why I'm screwed up. That doesn't exist in the psychological model. Maybe you have a therapist who will go there with you, but it doesn't exist in the psychological models. You're the problem. It's a great system. The system is great. And if there's dysfunction, it's because you're dysfunctional, right? So, that's one of the things that exists in all of these narratives, that it's always some individual, some loner, some, person who's, just like we've seen it with various leaders. They'll go invade a whole country because it's run by some madman, right? Like this happened with, the various wars, the Arab Spring Wars with Saddam Hussein and, these other groups, right? All these various people, and they did it with Gaddafi. And it comes out Gaddafi was loved by his people and was a really pretty good leader for his country. But they, been claiming he's insane, and they went in and destroyed his country and looted it based in this, these premises, these profiles they create on people. And, individuals can suck, but those same individuals gain power, and they lead governments and corporations, right? These big conglomerates of power, right? Centralized power, money power, and, military power, and, the power of a government. And so inevitably when crazy people, when murderous people, or people who just have to make decisions, the system needs tragedy. It needs oftentimes a loss of human life. It needs to do damage to the environment, like the system that we have now. It needs to do evil to keep on going, right? Because it's a greed, selfishly based system. That's a debt-based system where debt is wealth. I covered this in my other video on my apocalaughsnow channel yesterday. You can check that one out because it goes along with what I'm saying here. The economy, right? The economy like feeds off evil in a sense because it's, it needs distraction. It needs, these types of behaviors. And you have to, understand it's easy to blame the so-called elite. Like that's just something stupid that the people in the truth community do, right? Oh, it's the elite, it'd be fine. If the governments, it's just human behavior, the way humans are, that's brought out by the system. We have the stuff in us. We have the selfishness. We have the greed. We have the, the anger, we have the hatred, we have the violence, whatever it pulls out of you particularly. Like you send young men to war and they engage in horrific behavior. So war brings out the worst in people. Like that's why they say war is hell. It's the absence of God. Now, someone described war as the absence of God, although God is in everything, even war. You can't take God away from, God is maybe not being thought about, right? Your divinity isn't being pulled out of you, and you're not addressing your divinity, but it's always there. God is always there, even in horrible things, right? Even at the worst things, God is always at the center of anything. God is there. You can find God in anything, even, horrific things. And so there's even God in this demonic system. People want to, be victims, but we're all benefiting from, like we're on the plus side of the, ledger, like people in America, people who are, in terms of our lifestyle, in terms of the wealth that we've had, it comes from basically criminal activity, right? There are poor people that are suffering so that we can live in a wealthy way, that we can be wealthy. So half the world lives on $2 a day or less. A third of the world on $1 a day. This is, I don't even know what it is now. These are statistics from some years ago. But you think the majority of population, you go and you see these people. I saw it in India. I mean, you see the homeless people, you see the poor people in America, but they're living much better with much more resources and money. Of course, it's more expensive to live here, but they can't live on $1 or $2 a day. But you go to some of these other countries and you see how people are living, and their resources are being gobbled up by the wealthy people in their own country and being exported to countries like America, right? 20% of the resources. America is 5% of the population. Again, these are old statistics. I don't know what it is now. But that's why we have a better lifestyle, because other people are suffering in other parts of the world. That's just how it is. And we're all a part of that, whether we're conscious of it or not. Like there's a lot of things people don't want to know, right? It's like that famous scene from A Few Good Men where Jack Nicholson's character is saying, "You want me on this wall doing things like this," right? They ran some code red, right? The issue that happened was there was a soldier who was weak, and he had some sort of physical condition they didn't know about, and they were hazing him, the other soldiers, and he died, right? And that created the investigation, but it was the kind of behaviors that are necessary to toughen up people and things to make them into, cold-blooded, hardened killers, which you need in your military, right? And we need in our military to keep the system going, right? The military's there to keep the economy going. And so it's always a systemic issue with individuals being corrupted by the system, right? The individual is responsible, but the system is, what makes the individual into the monster that they are, right? And so, like, this is a global system heading to, disconnected from the divine. And when you disconnect yourself from God, on a system or as an individual, which pretty much everybody is, our system disconnects people from God. And the religion doesn't do anything to reconnect you. The religion acts as a middleman. So people say, I'm religious, I'm connected to God. Well, if you go outside your religious teaching, sure. If you're working directly to connect to God directly, that's what the heartfulness system helps people achieve. To reconnect people through their heart, through the transmission and cleaning that's offered in the system, that you can connect to the divine essence of yourself, your soul, the part of you that's divinity, and connect to God through that, right? Because it's all a part of it. And then you start connecting to the divinity within everything and everybody. And so you're plugging back into the system, right? But the system has worked to unplug people from their divine connection. And so when you introduce that into the human population on a systemic level and an individual level, you're going to create monsters, right? Demons who are disconnected. And then to keep people disconnected, they have to introduce more evil and drama and things into the storyline and narratives. And they're going to develop these, governmental institutions that are in charge of psychological operations to keep the crazy going, to keep people disconnected from God, right? And you can see these things, these profiles they develop in storylines and narratives, And as soon as something happens, boom, 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 these different talking points are unveiled by the media and these other people, and it's just such a easy pattern to recognize, but nothing that you can say anything about, right? You can't speak up about it because you look like a monster to your sheeple friends, and all the rest of it, like social media. They have developed these defense mechanisms to the truth, to the they're being exposed for what they are, right? And so now, so many years after the internet has evolved, now there's widespread suppression of people's vision of the truth. When you recognize the pattern and you point it out, they have ways of stopping you from doing that. It's more than just censorship, right? It's suppressing the truth, right? There's truth suppression because the truth is kryptonite to our system, right? If the truth comes out, then people lose faith in a system that's built on illusion, built on like an evil illusion. And so when people lose faith in the economic system and the governments, then the system collapses. And so it's almost in our best interest to keep it to ourselves if we're, because we're 100% dependent on this evil system. And although spiritually it'll be great when the system collapses, we'll have more spiritual opportunity. Although the system does provide people with a spiritual opportunity when you can go against the powers that be in an internal way and connect to God through your, by not falling for all the lures and all the temptations that exist in the system. But anyways, right? That's just something that, came to mind this morning for some reason. I don't know. Let's get into the other headlines here. Okay, so just a few things to get to. I'm going to cover some other stuff that I had up on my toolbar. On my other channel, I'm going to cover a little bit of the end of Jojo Magoo's speech, the stuff where he talks about God. But this is Halsey claims record label wants fake viral moment before releasing song. So this is her TikTok video. Halsey looking a little bit rough. Basically, I have a song that I love that I want to release ASAP, but my record label won't let me. I've been in this industry for 8 years, and I've sold over 165 million records. She can't sing. I showed you that thing with Bono, where Bono can't sing either. And Bono has never been able to really sing. Just not good vocals, right? Not good vocal cords. And they're doing a Red Brand thing with Jimmy Kimmel's, and her ability to sing is like there's no, without some sort of auto tuning, it's brutal.
We snapped our shots.
Love that filter.
YouTube's pizza rides.
The rodent less traveled.
Isn't social media divine?
Beyonce smashed that windshield in.
But if you like it, then you should have put a ding on it.
Swear to Lord,
What a
Jigglypuff.
swell year it has been. And have you heard about Jon Snow?
What now?
He's still alive on that dragon show. And have you seen that Hamilton?
Sold out.
Tough ticket. Heard even Bono can't get in.
I tried.
Me too.
And my record company is saying that I can't release it unless they fake a viral moment on TikTok. That's, kind of a big statement, right? Everything is marketing, and they're doing this to basically every artist these days. I just want to release music, man, and I deserve better. TBH. Not sure. Thank you, something. Whatever. I don't know what it means. Do I have to look it up? I don't want to look it up. TBH. TBH means to be honest. So, not normally honest, but this case being honest, and Halsey is being honest. But you think about this. If something has to be faked for Hollywood celebrities, there needs to be a fake viral moment. To make something profitable, there has to be a viral moment. Think about that, right? There has to be some sort of viral moment for them to release a song so that people will know about it. Otherwise, it won't get the attention it needs, and it won't sell. I mean, that's why they're doing it. If they have to do that with celebrities, well, what do they have to do for news media events and to move things politically, right? We live in a world of sensationalism. It's always been this, but it's much worse now. Whereas things have to be sensationalized. There has to be drama. There has to be a backstory. There has to be human interest components. There has to be something that makes it pop on the internet and makes people talk about, for them to sell something to you, no matter what it is, records or, political policy or whatever, right? Fake, 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 fake.
Fake, 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 fake.
Everything has to be faked in one way or another. And she's just admitting to something here that goes across the board. We live in a fake world. It's an illusion within an illusion, right? Life on Earth is Maya. I've talked about that before. The Maya story in the ancient Sanskrit language. Life on planet Earth is illusionary. Our physical bodies, which seem solid and seem real, are illusions in the sense of what we really are as a soul, what we really are as a spiritual essence. And so there's so much illusion and fakery in our system, and this is just alluding to that, right? So I didn't, other than this, I don't know much about Kourtney Kardashian. She marries Travis Barker in another wedding in Italy. So they flew out to Italy. Dude, what's the happening there? He shaved his head, and she's wearing white. And is that the Mother Mary in her dress? It's amazing what these, hoes will try to get away with, right? And then here she is with their fake lips, blowing a kiss. Kim Kardashian supports Pete Davidson as he bids farewell to SNL. There's all this Kardashian news. Well, why wouldn't she support him, right? Kourtney Kardashian changes her name to Barker, Courtney Barker, on Instagram. And then this thing, Coco Austin dragged for pushing daughter Chanel 6 in stroller. And I didn't know who this was, Coco Austin. But then when I saw this picture of this kid, here, of course, here's Ice-T. I'm like, oh, that kid looks like Ice-T. And I saw Ice-T sitting there. I'm like, all right, this is Ice-T's wife, and she's pushing her daughter in a stroller. And when he's there, but he didn't get dragged on the internet, but she did. So that's Coco news. Coco's pushing this Ice-T looking kid in a stroller. Okay, so one of the biggest problems with the truth community and the way it's configured now and its original sort of, its original construction as a social movement is that this idea is very embedded in most people in the truth community that the people that run the system, the elite as some people call it, the controllers as I call them, are the problem, right? This comes from Alex Jones. A lot of people in the truth community say, I heard one truther about a year ago. My wife was listening to something, and I came into the kitchen, and the guy was just saying, governments are the problem. People are set by themselves. They're great by themselves, right? People are fine by themselves, and that's not true. Even in a tribal situation, even in a more natural situation, even in a family situation, there are, issues, right, with human beings. There are flaws with human beings. So there's an individual problem. I often talk about the system, a systemic problem, but the system can't pull things out of you that you don't already have. They can't, I guess they can create hatred in you that didn't exist before and then pull it out of you, right? An abusive system. But for the most part, there are things that are inside of you that you have to master, and that's what we're here to do. And so a system definitely is a contributing factor to what's going on, a system created by humans, but also we have problems individually. So there are the people that run the system, and those are people who are just have power to allow their deviance life, right? Allow their deviant tendencies to be expressed because they have power to express those deviant tendencies. And also they have power to prevent the consequences from those deviant tendencies from happening, right? And so, yeah, they are a problem. They are, maybe the biggest problem, but they're not the whole problem. And so getting rid of the ruling system, which I've said for a number of years now, isn't going to change a thing. I've seen it because in the truth community, the same behaviors that are complained about in the elite, the so-called elite, you can go group by group, demographic by demographic. I mean, most ethnic groups believe that they're better than the other ethnic groups, right? If you go to like any country and any, it could be a religion, it could be, whatever. I mean, most people find themselves in a group that thinks their group is better than every other group. That's just the way human beings work. There's always going to be these prejudices and there's always going to be these negative tendencies until we, as a species, evolve out of them. We cast them out, right? In the heartfulness meditation, I talked about this story between the second master of the system and the third master that he was training. He was training to take over the system, Master Charji, and Babaji, the second master. And Charji came to him and said, I just hate this guy at work. Like, I just hate him. And Babaji said, well, you got to throw that hate out of your system. It's going to contaminate your system, right? This idea of feeling resentment is like swallowing a poison pill and expecting your enemy to die, right? When you feel hate, hate sucks to feel. It feels bad to hate. It feels bad to feel resentful. It feels bad to feel like a victim, right? Feeling weak and helpless like some kind of victim, like victim consciousness. You can get pity from other people or whatever you do, right? But it feels bad inside of you. These are conditions, human conditions, that feel heavy and gross. I cover things every day, depravity, that if I really thought about it or really got into it in more than just a superficial way that I cover it, I would start to feel the condition of you start to feel the condition or the reaction to the condition where you feel negativity, hatred, and all these things. And I don't want to do that. Like, that's why I don't get, too involved in all this stuff I cover, no matter how evil it is, right? Because it's going to wreck my spiritual condition. Like the heartfulness meditation, you're supposed to guard your spiritual condition, and something like hatred comes into your system, you're supposed to throw it out of your system. Babaji said that to Master Charji, throw it out of your system, because he had risen to such a high spiritual level. I mean, you should do it anyway. But if you go to a very high spiritual level, it contaminates your whole system, and you've worked really hard to purify it. Because if you have a open spiritual system and you're connected to God, you form this vacuum where you're pulling God's love and energy to you all the time. And if you put a little particle of hate in there, the whole system will, it's like a fertile system, and the hatred will just proliferate and take over the whole system, right? Like a cancer. And so the higher you go spiritually, the more you have to discipline your mind and your, what you allow into your system. And so this idea that the people that run the system are the only problem, and if you get rid of them, everyone would be fine, isn't true, right? We have a human problem where we have lower level tendencies that get expressed in the ways that you see all the time now, right? And even if it isn't as bad as it is now, they're always there in latent form, in these sort of Shangri-La utopian societies. They're always there, right? They're always potential for them to be expressed, right? So that's the cleaning aspect of the heartfulness system, which addresses both these things. And the problem with the truth community is that there's this solution, because we've all been trained that there's a bad guy. Like there's a bad guy and a good guy, and we're always the good guy. I mean, even, you see villains who think themselves as a good guy in real life and in movies. And so there's always a bad guy and a good guy, and we're the good guys. And so if we get rid of the bad guys, then the problem is solved and everyone can live happily ever after. And that doesn't exist. When the bad guy is inside of you, and we're all contributing to this, this egotistical, demonic type of system and institutions and all the rest of it, then we're all contributors to it. And so we're all affected by it, right? And so the system does have to go down. But what is going to make things get better is that people get better when they create the new system, they shed a lot of these negative. We all shed a lot of these negative tendencies. That's the only solution. That sure the system can go down, but what about the next system, right? Well, it's going to be the same thing if we're manifesting, like an evil reality because of what's inside of us, right? And, most truthers don't go there because it's just more convenient to rail against the so-called elite, the powers that be. Oh, they're the ones doing it. Yeah, well, I mean, if you take over their place, you would be the same way, right? Like you would eventually get corrupted. Like that's what happens to everybody, even the best person, the most tired, developed soul. They're in this position when they realize that to keep the system going, you have to do evil stuff. This system feeds off of evil, right? And, it's dependent on evil to keep on going. And so, like, it's not a shock when evil things happen for that reason. I'm going to talk about that in terms of God and Jojo Magoo talking about God, right? Because, God allows things to happen because we have freedom of choice, right? It isn't a matter of, God making things happen, or it's his job, or it's God's job to prevent things from happening. It's our job to become the best versions of ourselves where we don't do bad things, right? Individually and collectively. And right now we're nowhere near that, obviously. And so what's going to change? When will human beings rise up and embrace their higher nature? That's, the big question. Is it possible? Can human beings, the human beings that are on Earth, rise up and embrace a higher version of themselves, a more spiritual, selfless, divine version of themselves? And, we'll see whether that happens or not. Like right now it doesn't look like it will, but, I mean, it might. Like it's a possibility. It's there. I mean, it's a potential. It's something that we have inside of us. We all have divinity inside of us. We all have a best version. We all have, our divine self, the most spiritual version of ourselves. And we all can reach this goal. There's been people on Earth who have reached the highest levels of spiritual development. And they're examples for us. And so can we, right? Are we willing to? Are we willing to even try? And right now the answer is no, but I mean, some people are. But, in a haphazard way, I mean, I'm doing something that the heartfulness system that leads to that. And, I'm a slacker. I do I do it. But I mean, not on a level that is, I always could be better. Everyone could. And so there's people who are actively working to be more spiritual, to, embrace this higher nature. And, and I don't know how good everyone is who does it or not, but there is some people who do that, and then the rest of the people are just embracing the dark side and going in the wrong direction. And so the potential's there. It's a possibility for all of us, but will we, make that choice? That's the only big thing that's left to, understand or to see as the system completely collapses, and there's new characters in a sense. There's new plot lines and storylines where the system we're 100% dependent on is no longer there for us. And then what are people going to do? Are they going to realize the error of their ways, especially when there's horrific consequences, whatever, wrecking of the planet that happens? And so will people then say, all right, we effed up, we got to be better, and seek to redeem themselves and bow before God and, vow to be better and, rise up to a higher level? And, if that's the big question, right? Right now, as long as the system's going strong, people aren't gonna even think about that, right? And they're just, look at the potential of what's happening and blame one group or another. It takes them off the hook to do anything or change. And, everyone's trying to grab what they have, their lifestyle, what's going to be left of it, and try to, it depends on how active people are, and even that. Like a lot of people are just watching this, waiting for it's like a, like an asteroid's heading to Earth and just looking up the sky and go, oh, it's getting closer. It's getting closer. And not doing anything and just, surrendering to a, some sort of a dark fate without even trying to adjust themselves and adapt and prepare for this transitionary period. There's a change coming. And when you have a change, you've gone through changes in your life, and there's always better to understand the change, embrace the change, and work towards adapting, accepting, and being grateful for the change. And most people aren't doing that because, a lot of people are just, for them, this is it. This is going to happen, and they're just going to, curl up in the fetal position and wait for the angels to take him away. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely born from the Apocalaughs. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.